Hello, welcome to Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid, the podcast that explores sustainable solutions for the most pressing issues facing our planet and communities today. I'm Planet Aid's Communications Manager, Haley Chitty, and I'm going to turn it over to our host, Planet Aid's Communication and Content Specialist, Monica Johnson. I'll jump back in later to ask a few follow-up questions. Monica, take it away.
Thank you, Haley, and welcome to Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. I'm Monica Johnson, and I'm going to be your guide for this journey as we take challenging situations and try to simplify them. And it's also an opportunity to learn from incredible individuals and organizations at the forefront of developing and implementing sustainable solutions. Change is not only possible, but it is essential, and it begins with understanding. And today we are talking to Ben Frost, Vice President of Corporate Development, and Adrian Logan, Chief Commercial Officer at Spectrum. And Spectrum actually offers innovative technological water solutions. So we're going to get into this and learn exactly what that means. So welcome to the podcast, Ben and Adrian. How are you?
Great to be here.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. So just want to jump in. Can you provide us with just a brief overview of Spectrum and its mission in the field of sustainable water solutions? And also, if you could just give us a little background on how you both got involved in the industry. And we'll start with you, Adrian.
Yeah, sure. So again, Adrian Logan, Chief Commercial Officer for Spectrum. Been in the industry for almost 20 years now in the environmental sector. And how Spectrum and AFCO started, I was actually starting my career with Spectrum, was there 10 years, and then went on and founded a company called AFCO 360, both specialized environmental services around extensive water treatment, dewatering, solid minimization, waste management, carbon solutions. And like I said, I was one of the founders for AFCO 360, left Spectrum, and then a year ago we were acquired by Spectrum. So now we're all one Spectrum together. Like I said, we're provide innovative solutions around water and wastewater treatment. And like I said, apply those service lines and couple those together to provide turnkey solutions, and with technology and an extensive background that our staff's made up of subject matter experts in the industry.
Very good.
Sure. So I joined Spectrum here a year ago, January. So Adrian's been getting me up to speed with the whole team here. So my job is helping to build out the organization and team here as we brought these two fantastic companies together, and then searching for other great opportunities in water and technology to really find, just like your brand is, sustainable solutions in water. So, our vision is to deliver innovative industrial solutions that enhance operational efficiency, sustainability, and customer success. We're all about our customers, and our values are well-being, accountability, technical excellence, environmental stewardship, and relationships. Our real niche in the market here is we have the technical expertise to take whatever challenge that our customers have, really our partners at this point, because we've been with them for many years in most cases as we also grow here. But, all the way from how do we solve this water challenge, all the way through manning it, providing the equipment, providing that turnkey solution, and then continually optimizing it to get better results for the environment and for our clients at the same time here, through all sorts of different treatment methods that Adrian, Josh Chapman, our COO, and our whole team provide here throughout the Gulf Coast and throughout the nation.
Very good. And I know, Ben, you were sharing with me that you are over the rebrand of the company. And we kind of met via the fact that you all were donating some of your clothes for us to be able to reuse and recycle or whatever it may be. So thank you so much for investing in us as Planet Aid.
And, different for us on finding partners that are also, something as simple as, what do we do with all this gently used clothing to divert it from a landfill? It's the same approach we're taking with wastewater and dredging. How do we find those ways to keep stuff out of landfills, find beneficial reuses? And when we found Planet Aid, we're like, this is the perfect fit for what we're trying to do with our rebrand here at Spectrum. And just shows like we're even on these little, not little, but on these smaller waste streams for us compared to other things we're working on. we can keep something and someone else gets to use this equipment another time, and it goes to benefit your projects all over the world and the nation, which are fantastic.
Good. And we love the end of life solutions and promoting the circular economy, and that's exactly what we're doing as partners in this venture. So you can't get any more essential than water. So, let's talk about that. So if we didn't have this industry, what would we be dealing with daily concerning our water supply?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, and going back to what we just discussed from a beneficial reuse to, I think it's a great opportunity to work with Planet Aid on, you know, being able to reuse. We're on the waste handling and water reuse direction as we continue to look at innovative ways to reduce our carbon footprint. But again, it's a great opportunity for us to be a part of that. But when we talk about if we didn't have the industry, what would we be dealing with on a daily basis? There's a lot of things. The company is heavily situated in oil and gas, downstream, petrochem, refining. That is the market where most of our services are being applied to. However, it is there's various markets when we talk about pulp and paper, poultry, municipal, PFAS in groundwater, minage drainage water. So those are all types of industries that we would be dealing with that on a daily basis. And we're slowly pioneering into those other markets and finding solutions for the contamination of water that you wouldn't think of. We're continuing to find out contaminants in water that were not there but are now there. We're learning about that. So like I said, I mean, we do a lot of things that when it comes to PFAS and reusing water, that whether it be we've have an application that we just come off of with a client that during cement pours generated a lot of water that come off of those cement pours. So what we did was, this application was a unique one, that we were able to take the cement wash water, separate the water from the cement, and actually treat it to a standard to be used as dust suppressant water for dust control for a site. So those are
Wow.
some things that we've, thinking outside the box. And I think our team does a great job, Ben and everyone else, on coming up with those innovative solutions, because that's the direction of the industry. And most of our clients are headed. I mean, reducing carbon footprint, beneficial reuse is a big deal.
I heard you say this word a couple of times. It sounds like German to me, so I'm going to just ask, what is PFAS?
So PFAS is a contaminant. It's a constituent in water that what we're finding is PFAS is contained in a lot of things, in groundwater and plastic and various things. If you just type in PFAS, you'll see that it's a concerning constituent, a contaminant, I'll say, in water that has seemed to cause issues. That is becoming a big concern with all industries. Like I said, we're working at an airport right now where we have contaminated groundwater that we're having to evacuate the water from the ground to treat to remove the PFAS. So it's a pyrofluoric acid that's contained that, again, once you start really do a deep dive into PFAS, it's in a lot of the products that we use.
It's
You
one
know,
of
it's
the
that's
forever chemicals that you hear, mentioned, that there's growing regulation around. Just this past week, Europe came out with a very stringent guide on how PFAS is going to be handled. And we see that
mm,
playing out here at a recent conference that we were at, talking with municipal water leaders, fire departments, industrial water services. This was something that in the forever chemicals space, that they're trying to find different ways to treat and evaluate it. And there was all these different companies that had these different solutions. But on Adrian's team, what we have found here is that using our carbon solutions business, we're really outperforming a lot of different methodologies here in PFAS remediation. And by being able to string together a couple different treatment methods to get this water clean, it can then go back at a much higher purity into the ecosystem, as well as removing those chemicals, getting those disposed of in a much safer way, in somewhere where it's not going to affect agriculture, people, of course, or the environment. And so we're doing a ton of work in that space right now. We have a carbon solutions team that specializes in this. And they are really kind of the subject matter experts in the Gulf Coast for this. So it's a huge space that we're growing a lot in combating these forever chemicals and preventing them from getting into that. And we're always here to help with that.
As I listen to both of you, I'm just thinking you have a team of certified smarty pants that are really just kind of uh, assessing the situations and coming up with these solutions, and that is amazing. So, what would we be surprised to know about when it comes to who needs these water solution resources, and what industries are coming to you for help?
Yeah, we've kind of discussed, the various markets that do come to us that need assistance when making sure that the water that's generated or wastewater or any type of water that has pollutants in it, that it needs to be treated before hitting any receiving body of water. What's surprising is that when we talk about this, a lot of our industry is headed towards zero discharge. A lot of the refineries and petrochemical facilities are trying to reuse that water. So, during all the process of making crude oil, a lot of what we call wastewater is generated and it goes to treatment. Then most time it is discharged that meet permissible limits to go into the receiving body of water. However, now we're looking at, which is surprising, is have certain projects that zero discharge to reuse the water and put it at the back at the front of the plant that's critical to meet production demand. So that's very surprising. We also do some upstream work with clients in the upstream market, that for every barrel of oil there's 1 barrel of water produced, that the conventional way of how we handle that water in the areas of West Texas is we inject it in what we call a deep well. And now what we're starting to notice is that there's some real effects on the amount of water being injected, I would say, back into the Earth's core, that can cause some earthquakes and stuff like that. So we've really been doing a lot of research on how to, again, treat the water and find reuse options for that water, rather than doing it the conventional way of deep well or that type of disposals. I would say that's probably one of the most surprising things or applications that we've seen. And there's a lot of them, but those are the things that our team has been working on to try to come up with, like I said, innovative solutions.
Yeah, and for me, it's really the scope of the industry. I mean, this is a $388 billion industry. That's larger than JP Morgan Chase. That's larger than the annual revenue of 2024 of Alphabet, of the Google's parent company. Like, this is a massive industry that's growing rapidly. It's growing, projected in the next 5 years at a 4% CAGR rate. A huge, huge industry. Of that industry, it's also important to know that Texas is making up roughly 28% of the expenditure in that. And for reference, when we're talking our major clients, yes, we are, working on options with food and beverage and manufacturing, but the energy industry is 10 times larger a user of water than the next largest, which is manufacturing, right? So just the scope of the industrial water space is massive, that our teams here at Spectrum throughout the nation are working in every day to find these solutions. We get calls to deal, hey, we need this, we're dealing with this problem, can you solve it today? We'll have people out there to work this, and then as we partner with them, Adrian's team, Josh's team, our water solutions team, have built those trusts to be that long-term partner to treat with, whether it's a dewatering solution, whether it's a chemical solution, whether it's a biological solution, to treat and keep this water and keep as much in the system as possible.
Is it a good thing for the industry to be growing as it is? Does that say something? Is that a larger question about what's happening with the water systems that we have?
I would say yes. I mean, I think it's a one thing, like Adrian's talking, a lot of our partners are working towards zero discharge. And that's really the
Hmm.
space that we want to operate in, right? The more that we keep water in a system, the more that our teams can get to not having to pull in new water, that we can just do a closed loop system. That's what you're seeing right now. Those are the questions that our teams are getting from some of the biggest data center providers in the nation, from the largest petrochemical companies in the nation, is how we can provide that. You see also, though, working with water stresses, right? The United States has areas now that are entering water stress. New Mexico, especially, and that region in West Texas is starting to experience water stress on par with other parts of the world where we've seen significant disruption from water. But what we're always looking for here is how we can keep the water in the pipe, how do we keep it in the system, and how do we treat it to keep it as clean as possible. Anything, Adrian, on that?
No, I would say, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, water is the heartbeat from us living every day to how these industries operate. If we don't have the water supply for us to crack crude or to make vinyl or plastic, they just gotta, cease production, because that is the heartbeat of I would say all of the industry, that water is the main source, just like it is for us. So it's critical.
I know that you've given us a bunch of examples. Can you give us an example of maybe a project that is kind of near and dear to your heart that's had a monumental, lasting impact? And by contrast, what would be something that is just your run of the mill, super common job that you're doing every single day?
Yes, sure. So we're situated in the LNG capital of the world. So we have been heavily involved during all phases of construction to operation of LNG facilities. So liquid nitrogen gas is the Gulf Coast area, especially Louisiana in particular. These LNG facilities are situated have access to the Gulf, that we're exporting LNG, and we've assisted a lot with them. So I would say, for as what's a lasting impact is that we're assisting in the transformation from coal or other high impact energy sources with LNG.
Yeah, and then on the daily jobs or the super common ones, but where we can make a huge impact. Something as simple as removing sediments from ponds, from next to every food pond or food plant or farm even, or industrial center. You'll see these big water ponds where industrial water comes in. And there's all these different ways of how do you separate the water from the sediments that need to get removed. Well, we're once again in sustainable solutions here. We use a gravity process of the water goes into, we call it a dewatering box. You could think of it as like almost like a big dumpster that has false walls in it. So the water drains out through the filtration. And instead of using a ton of electricity, a ton of diesel fuel, we just let gravity do the work. And so that's saving a ton of energy, a ton of fuel. And we found it's actually very effective compared to more mechanical means. And it just prevents a ton of breakdowns and saves a ton of time. And so even in these kind of run-of-the-mill daily jobs our teams are doing, I mean, we're using robotic dredges out there to get the material out, and then by using the sustainable solution dewatering boxes, we're keeping more water from entering the landfill, and we're also preventing a ton of wasted electricity or fuel usage.
Wow, that's great, and what a local impact, correct?
Mhm.
What are some of the biggest challenges the company faces in sustainable water solutions? It is an ever evolving field, I'm imagining.
It is. We're faced with challenges every day, but one that comes to mind, regulations behind water quality and meeting effluent water discharge parameters that everyone is faced with, again, across all industries. I'm one of them, that this applies. But I would say from a permitting standpoint on the water quality that we have to meet, when we go into on site, it's either because we're treating the water that's generated to be discharged, or there's some excursions happening that we have to navigate through to mitigate. But I would say from challenging is you know permitting is not getting easier. The permissible discharge parameters that our clients have to meet, they're only getting harder to meet. Therefore, the components necessary and the equipment and technology and the components coupled with, our experts is continuing to keep up with the pace of the changing discharge parameters. So they become, concentrations get lower. That means further treatment is required, which is a good thing. Every day is we're continuing to learn on, as we've learned about PFAS and really understanding that contaminant, that pollutant, on how it impacts and what it's impacted, and what we're learning now from the past, and now really putting a lot of focus on it. So it's understanding, the testing and quantifying it. And also, like I said, the discharge parameters getting more stringent, so that are just pushing water has to be cleaner. That's becomes challenging on us, that the components necessary to treat that water 5 years ago has now changed. So whether from an equipment to technology to all those components coupled together to continue to meet those discharge parameters, and that's where I would say most of our stress is.
Is
Yeah, and
is
on the
I just had a
just
question
go ahead.
on that though. Let me ask about you said the permitting is getting harder. Is this just because they're trying so hard to get to that landmark of
Zero
zero waste?
discharge.
Yeah. I mean, technology changes every day, and how we use that technology on understanding. Analytical is getting very involved. The instruments that now how many constituents and of what we can read in water tells us a lot. Therefore, we're learning more about what's in the water, and what we knew 20 years ago to compare what we know is in water now. I think it's changing. I know it's changed. So therefore, it becomes more challenging as we identify. I mean, PFAS wasn't a thing 5 years ago. Now all of a sudden it is. So it's really challenging.
And just on even the scope here of how much it's changing, and like we talked on the growth, but as a way to visualize it here, data centers now are using roughly 291 million gallons of water in the next 5 years. That's about 441 Olympic-sized swimming pools that are going to be used just for water. And so as we try to find ways of keeping more water in the system, every time we can eliminate one swimming pool worth of water that has to get reused or treated, that we can keep in the system, that's just huge savings for society as a whole that can be used for other purposes, as well as meeting what consumers want, right? They want fast AI, they want fast results from their phones, and so providing that, but also providing it in a sustainable way, that's what we're really working towards here. But it's just the scope of the challenge we're dealing with.
What are some of the pioneering technologies that Spectrum is currently employing to address water sustainability? Anything that you're, kind of working on right now that's forefront or even coming up in the future?
I would say Ben kind of mentioned, so we've got some our patent dewatering phase separators. We really, and we talked about kind of gravity versus mechanical dewatering that eliminates some of the hazards and environmental impacts of mechanical dewatering equipment. But we've looked at innovative ways for that piece of equipment on how to reduce, the time spent over the road, and how can we minimize that, which has really been something we've looked at. Then also, I mean, kind of where everybody's going is we're actually crafting AI software that's going to tell us a lot about our carbon solutions division. So carbon is a granular activated carbon that's used to either filter water or vapors. And what we can do now is when we send carbon out and it's filtering contaminants, AI is telling us how long when is that piece of carbon exhausted to where it cannot remove anymore. So at some point it meets a threshold that it doesn't filter the water anymore. And we have AI in a system now and a predict model that tells us when that vessel's on site and we're using it, and we got to plug in all these engineering controls that tells us that we've got some of our experts in our carbon solutions group that have crafted and tailored this AI software that is giving us that we can give to our clients. And we're really bringing value and separating ourselves from our competitors with this software and how we're putting it together. So I would say that has been huge for us.
That's amazing because you need to know when that is actually expiring. The impact is expiring, so you can kind of
Yeah.
re-up. I'm guessing.
Just like your water filter in your refrigerator, that when you get your water, we kind of know when that water filter is going to expire, given the inlet constituents of the drinking water. So that it's key that we know that,
That's
and it can't
awesome.
apply to that.
And that just also is preventing more waste from going to the landfill by optimizing it. Prevents, your standard time-based or, days-based solution on when you're going to replace it. Instead, we can get a much more refined timeline and maximize the usage, which has great results for our clients and also great results for the environment, right? It's just focused in on that sustainability of what we do, maximizing its usage, and then reactivating it when it comes out as many times as possible. That's another part that we're looking at doing.
Very good. Can you discuss the environmental impact of Spectrum solutions compared to conventional water management practices? I'm kind of just trying to get you to separate yourself from the pack. What is it that that you're doing right, and not to say that other people are doing wrong, but what is it that you're really doing right?
Yeah, I would say we've touched on it several times is our patented dewatering equipment that we have that's part of our rental fleet is how we separate ourselves from the pack. Ben kind of talked about how that unit works. So we have what we call is a gravity phase separator that is a dewatering mechanism used to dewater solids. So a stream, say we're pumping water off of a pond floor, it consists of water and solids, so it goes in our unit, and it separates the water from the solids, and the water is therefore clean and for discharge. But our competitors are using what we call mechanical dewatering, which consists of a mechanical machine doing this dewatering. Our unit doesn't require any power, fuel, any of that. So, like I said, we're going to eliminate the environmental impacts by this unit, and also, not having the consumption of energy and fuel and those sources when our competitors, when they show up on a job site, their piece of equipment that we're competing against has to use power. It's using fuel. It has a lot of hydraulic fluids that can potentially lead to spills or contaminate the soil when on a job site. I would say that's probably our biggest token of how we separate ourselves or our piece of equipment and technology when in our dewatering sector. And also, when you talk about our environmental solutions group, using AI software to, when we compete against our carbon competitors, is that we understand a little deeper of how that's being used, when it's exhausted, and how clean the effluent water coming off of that unit really is. And the same with our waste management solutions group is understanding how we convert a waste to a beneficial reuse option. We have a lot of those that our waste management group works on, that these facilities generate waste just like they generate water that has to go off site for disposal. So we really got involved in understanding that some of the waste that they're sending off cannot be classified as waste. There is beneficial reuse options for it that can be used. Therefore, it's no longer a waste. So I would say across all product service lines that we offer, we are from an equipment to a waste to a carbon group. We're finding innovative ways that really separate ourselves from the pack.
Yeah, when we were recently at a show, we just had so many folks come up to us and say, you all are the total solution, right? Where before they would have to go to one person for carbon, one person for environmental, one person for equipment. Instead, they're just all coming to us, and they, our experts can put together through a project scope to getting the right equipment with our own people that, we keep our teams together. So they're years of experience together doing this work here through the carbon to polish and get a really high purity. And then for whatever is on the inside, whatever waste comes out the end, our environmental team will either find a very sustainable way to dispose it, or we find beneficial reuse of ways that it can be reused in a different way to still gain benefit versus going to a landfill. So diversion from landfill is really core to what we do, just like you all.
I was going to say, we connect there. When we use words like treatment, I know that it can evoke a bevy of thoughts for people, especially about what's being used to treat water. What can you tell us about the safety of any chemicals that are being used? And also, I know that you've gone through this a little bit, but how does the water go from a state of being unusable to usable? Just give us a little, understanding about that.
Yeah, I think that question comes up a lot. Is that taking contaminated water and treating it? How is it considered not contaminated? And there's steps involved in wastewater treatment, from a pre-treatment to a biological treatment, which a lot of people are not aware of the steps of conventional wastewater treatment. Um, that most of your conventional, what we call activated sludge treatment, is a biological process where living, breathing organisms are eating the pollutants in the wastewater. So that is a process that happens. Then after that process, there is some chemical treatment involved to get it to a cleaner spec. And the chemicals associated with water treatment that Spectrum deploys and has, our proprietary blends of products, they're all go through what we call toxicity testing. So that is taken, there's different types of species we use to do the toxicity testing, whether that be a minnow or something, that it goes through lab testing, and we know at what point the chemical in the water is toxic to the species that they're receiving, it's going into. So we're able to provide that information on toxicity testings on the products. Most of the products we use are organic, so they don't have any impact on the environment of the receiving body of water. That question comes up a lot, but I would say we do extensive testing. A lot of our clients ask the same questions and also have to see the same documents to say, hey, these are safe products. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't think my wife and kids still understand what how to treat wastewater. But when we talk about bioaugmentation, we every day we have field service reps that, just like we take our vital signs, they're taking vital signs on the bacteria from the biological health parameters of oxygen levels and things like that are very similar to us, which is pretty fascinating. We do a
Yeah,
lot
and
every day. We're looking under a microscope to make sure that living, breathing organism is healthy, not overloaded with the pollutants that's being loaded from that refinery or from that facility.
yeah, it's really interesting. I think one of the things that fascinated me when I first joined is just how much our field teams are subject matter experts in biology. I mean, just, you don't think of how we employ biological solutions to prevent, an overuse of chemical or anything that we can through biological management. Our field teams every day are out there keeping the system healthy, solving it in a sustainable way. And it's just, it's so important. We have, a 13.5% increase in the US population facing drought in the last 12 months. So, every drop that we keep in the system that we can treat safely and sustainably is another, thing we're doing to combat drought, that we're doing to combat water insecurity in communities that we operate in.
Awesome. So as we talk about the places that you operate in, how does Spectrum actually engage with the local communities to promote awareness and education and sustainable water practices? Do you do any of that?
We do, we do, and I would say that we're in the early stages of that. I would say Planet Aid is one that we would consider, being a part of something and giving back. And Ben, if Ben wants to discuss that a little
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, I mean, when we found your team, we were just really impressed with your mission of, finding sustainable solutions for textiles and textile industry as we've gone through this rebrand, and then providing, those great outcomes through the projects you do all over the world. So, we're looking at that. We're growing in our communities that we're working on, but it's also educating folks in the industry about different solutions to solve problems versus always going with a mechanical solution or always going with a chemical solution. Well, hey, we can use carbon and we can use biological treatment and we can use our gravity boxes to help you go through it. And our field teams just really excel at showing them just how beneficial it can be and how that can help take pressure off there.
Very good. So I'm going to ask one last question. There are a lot of countries that have areas of undrinkable water. Does Spectrum do any kind of work overseas, charitable or otherwise, to help in areas with limited funds and limited resources?
Monica, we've been contacted from various countries, and have somewhat of a footprint on some smaller water treatment packages that we can deploy that take non-drinkable water to a drinkable water standard. Not we haven't. I wouldn't say we have done work that we've done that to give you an example of what we've done. We have worked in other countries, not with drink water. We've assisted. We actually deployed a team in Turkey, had a landslide that again doesn't pertain to non-drinkable water, but it is a water issue that caused a landslide, and we were called in to actually plug a pipe and discontinue the water that was causing the landslide in Turkey. That was last year that we did that. So
That's
I would
huge.
say not on a non-drinkable, but those conversations they have come up in the past, and we do have some solutions for that
Yeah.
we can assist with.
Yeah, we were recently contacted by some clients in South America that, needed assistance on their industrial and municipal water systems, that they're looking for kind of partnerships. So that's a growing area. I think the one that I was most excited about, we had someone contact us from a tequila distillery. And I think Adrian and I are going to be fighting for who gets to go on that job walk to go see how we can help out a tequila distillery and solve some of their water problems. So we'll see if anything comes. That I think Adrian and the carbon team are probably gonna keep me out of that. And they're gonna go have a good time.
All right. I'm going to hand it over to Haley.
Thanks so much. This is a real enlightening conversation. As with most of these things, you don't realize how in depth they are until you start to dive in. You just sort of think you assume you know what's going on. I'm wondering. It seems like a lot of your projects are pretty big and involved, and I'm just wondering. One of the things we look at is how can we make it easy for everyday people, everyday companies to sort of make a positive impact. So I'm just wondering if there's any low hanging fruit you see for the average business, for the average individual, whether it's their practices or maybe they advocate for something. Well, how can the average person sort of get up to speed on this and have a positive impact?
I would say on, the average person in whatever line of work you're doing, beneficial reuse of environmental streams is so key. Our environmental team I'm always just surprised at what they do to find ways to prevent stuff from going to a landfill and to find another use for it in a safe and sustainable way that benefits the community, that benefits the industry, that benefits, kind of the overall environmental challenges that we face. And so what they can do is, whatever line of work you're in, whether it's textiles, food, they can reach out to us. They can reach out to whomever to find ways to divert their waste stream from just going to a landfill. There is so much that our team has found. The application is never too small to have some benefit. And so just every day finding ways to divert, reuse, and recycle has been really impressive to me that folks can do. Adrian, anything else on those?
No, I think you were spot on. I think we can all be more conscious of how we handle, what do you do when you change your oil in your car? How do you handle that all? What do you do with it? Those are things that we all can improve on practices and we can assist with. But I think from a personal standpoint, that and recycling from separating cardboard from your trash and doing those things. I mean, I do that a lot. But no, I think Ben was spot on.
And it seems like the overall mission and goal here is huge, similar to what Planet Aid's trying to do in terms of tackling fast fashion and all this stuff. So, how do you guys stay optimistic when trying to accomplish such a big goal?
Yeah, I would say, Haley, we've got, our staff is growing every day and our business is growing every day. and we continue to keep up and come up with innovative technology and solutions that we can apply. So the team of subject matter experts, from engineers to PhDs, that we have that are helping us doing R&D work and that type of stuff to continue to be the pioneers and come up, like I said, with those solutions is key. And we just got to, continue to understand and move forward at the pace of what we're moving.
Yeah, it's just on top of that, just sharing, in your communities, just small little ways that you can improve and just finding those, going out into the industry, going out into colleges, and seeing what folks are doing and how you can partner with, younger generations, younger folks that are looking to explore. I don't think most young people would be like, oh man, I want to get into industrial water. And then they get here and like, this is so cool. They're out there, they're in the field, they're working in these really complex problems to, improve their communities, whether that's at a municipal water center, whether that's in, a big industrial center. It's a really cool industry. I would say folks just the more involvement, the more they learn about it, the better, and the ways that they can help get to those zero discharge goals is critical.
And I mean, it seems like we're gaining momentum in the right direction with the growth of your business. Is that something you're seeing, growing awareness and resources sort of being dedicated to this area?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll go let Adrian go on this.
From our team to our clients are becoming more aware of that. So it definitely is. There's a lot of awareness around it.
And I'm just wondering, what do you see as driving this awareness and momentum? I think ecologically, obviously, there's those factors. Are you seeing financial and social factors? I'm sort of thinking, like the upfront costs of setting up a closed system has got to be significant, but at some point in the long run, it's got to pay for itself in terms of efficiency and that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of wondering if you can name some of those factors you think driving this momentum.
I would say, we're
Go ahead.
talking water stress. I mean, you're just looking at, water stress forecasts over the next, 10 to 20 years. You have uh, growth in regions that have never experienced, water stress before. Like even in the Northeast, where you all are based out of, you see a 3 to 5% increase in water stress. The South, where a large population center is growing, and in the West especially, you're seeing just large increases in water stress. But what we're doing to combat that, what the industry is doing, or the industries are doing, is finding those zero discharge solutions, finding those methods to be more sustainable. One of the really interesting things I saw, Chicago alone loses nearly 50% of the water that goes out of their water treatment facilities before it gets to someone's spigot. It's lost through a leak, a running faucet, a crack in a water main. And so they're using AI to go in and detect where these leaks are without having to excavate the entire system. So they can then focus in on where that is going to prevent loss in a system. We're seeing that in our industrial clients as well. It's no longer acceptable to have leaky pipes. It's no longer acceptable to have kind of a large parameter for discharge. And so that's where our team is going in and finding those solutions to treat that water on the outside. And if there is a leak or a spill, we can come in and help clean that up in a safe and manageable way, reuse what we can, and safely dispose of what we can't.
Awesome. Last question. I'm just curious, what do you do with the PFAS when you separate it from the water?
So it's a good
What's the
question,
end of
Andy.
life for the PFAS?
Yeah, so there's certain ways that we can handle it. So the PFAS is actually contaminant. The PFAS, when we use the carbon, it's actually entrained in the carbon granulars that we use, the filters that we use, and that's going into the way carbons can be regenerated. It's heated up at high temperatures to clean that carbon particle off, and we're actually going through practices with what we call incineration of that carbon. That because when you burn the carbon off, well, now the carbon's in the emissions coming off of that, the exhaust coming off of that have to be recaptured. So I don't can't answer that and say exactly what we're doing as far as, hey, this is how we're handling, but we're evaluating the incineration or regeneration of carbon and how that's handled when it is PFAS contaminated. But we are looking at that, and we are regenerating carbon that is PFAS contaminated, and that it's in a controlled environment, that we're not, those vapors and those exhausts, we don't want that, what we call volatile organic carbons, to enter the environment as a vapor. So we're actually going through that practice to prevent that as well, because it's a full circle. I mean, we can remove it out the
Yeah,
water, then
it
also
really, I mean, you start to just, sorry, I just start to barely understand that, it's like the
it's a
tip
good
of the
question.
iceberg and the complexity of it.
Yeah, it's very
Sure. And
complex.
so we've looked at incineration. There's other companies that are looking at UV treatments. There's other companies that are looking at membranes. There's all sorts of different methods. This is really kind of one of the cutting edge areas and challenges for sustainable solutions. So for all the college scientists out there interested in, what to jump into, I would say, man, this is a fascinating problem. We're looking at different ways of doing it, and each way has its positives and its negatives, but the science hasn't determined what is the best way yet. So this is a great challenge that we're looking at, and the industry and really society as a whole is evaluating. There's some really fascinating papers if you're looking to nerd out on something and looking for a great sleep aid. So it's great.
Great. I mean, the nice thing about a challenge, that has such a big scope is there's no shortage of opportunities
Yeah.
to start to tackle the problem. That's kind of
Yeah.
what we see on our end.
Yep.
So it sounds very similar in that way. All right. Well, I'll turn it back over to Monica here. We'll close it out. Thanks so much. It's just a fascinating dive into a subject that, again, you think you know something about and you realize you know nothing.
One last question. I think Adrian probably is going to be able to answer this. Who comes into your field? Because I know that you were talking about these college students. So who exactly would be interested in coming in and would be a good candidate for this kind of work?
Yeah, I would say from a undergrad perspective, I mean, from an environmental science to chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, civil engineers, we have all of those engineers employed, and also from a lot of our field tech uh, positions. A lot of these, some do come out of high school and also have 2-year process operator degrees, process technology degrees. So I would say but I would say most of this staff is an engineering background, from an environmental engineer to mostly chemical engineers.
Very good.
And
All right.
especially on our field staff side, I think I'm a veteran myself. I think it's a very applicable field for veterans that are looking for challenging, ways to have a mission, to have a value-based role, right? Where you're improving your community by keeping the water safe, right? So for veterans, I highly recommend. It's a great industry to get in. It's challenging. You get the camaraderie, you get the teamwork, but you also have a great mission of keeping water safe for your community, and doing something cool with heavy equipment every day is always fun too.
Um, uh, Education, a co-op program that we have some students that are still considered a student, but off summer, so they come and co-op here. We actually have a water treatment system at our Lake Charles facility that you can actually put your hands on and see how that operates, from a process flow to those things, and trying to understand wastewater. So we do offer that as well, and also we've seen that those students that have co-opted with us become permanently employed after they get their degree. It helps us as well by training and development, and because it's when we talk about water treaters in our industry, there's kind of a thing of the past. There's not many seasoned water treaters out there now, so having to train and develop has been a challenge as well for us.
Okay. Well, again, to all you certified smarty pants, great opportunity. And we want to thank our guests, Ben and Adrian, for coming on our podcast today. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. And we hope you've been inspired by the ideas that we've explored today. And we encourage you to search for sustainable solutions that you can pursue and be a good steward in your neck of the woods and beyond. Haley?
Thank you, Monica. A few reminders to our listeners on the way out. If you want to stay connected with us and stay informed about the latest sustainable solutions, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Please share with your friends, family, colleagues. Together, we can make a difference. And remember, change starts with awareness and action, so let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to reach out to us on social media, through a website. Share your thoughts, ideas, and stories with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, it's a big world out there, but every small change counts. Together, we can build a better, more sustainable future. Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thanks.